In Conversation with Terry Shepard, award-winning broadcaster, narrator, and author. A deep dive into the writer's craft with the artists and support systems who create the stories we love.
Thanks, Lisa. If you enjoyed Eliabeth Crowens' Hollywood Hounds of the Baskervilles, you are in for a treat. She is back to introduce her second Babs Norman novel, Bye Bye Blackbird. With over 25 years in the entertainment industry between New York and L.A., Eliabeth has worn many hats: journalist, editor, martial artist, and award-winning writer. Her work has appeared in Black Belt, Sherlock Holmes Mystery Magazine, and anthologies like the Bram Stoker Award-nominated New York State of Fright. She also has racked up an impressive list of literary accolades, from the Eric Hoffer First Prize to multiple Chanticleer Review Grand Prize Awards. Hounds of the Hollywood Baskervilles has been nominated for the prestigious Agatha Award for Best First Novel. And this award, my friends, is often compared to the Oscars in our business. And if you read the book, you'll see it's well-deserved. Eliabeth Crowens, welcome back. It's great to talk with you again.
Thank you for having me.
So tell us about Bye Bye Blackbird.
Well, at the end of Hounds of the Hollywood Baskervilles, no dogs die. Of course, it's about dog napping, celebrity dog napping in 1940. And there's a big shindig on the MGM lot lawn. And a lot of the people have brought their dogs that have been rescued. And the dogs have been playing around and everything. And Guy Brandt, who is my protagonist's sidekick and partner, runs into Humphrey Bogart, who is playing with a scruffy little dog called Pard. And apparently they start talking about the dog. And this is the dog that was in High Sierra. And he's actually a bad luck charm. Pard gives him away to the law enforcement. And then he's on a race against time for his life because the dog gives him away to the law enforcement who wants to capture him. And he's playing with the dog, and the trainer comes, and apparently he has to take the dog back. And Humphrey Bogart mentions he wanted to buy him. He fell in love with the dog, and he's a major dog lover and had a few dogs at home, and the trainer wouldn't sell him to him. But apparently Guy and Babs, our protagonists, rescued a Newfoundland named Cappy that was owned by Bogey, and he left it at home because he was afraid it's a big dog, knock over some kids or something. But they start talking, and Guy gives him his business card. And of course, Bogart is wondering, why would I need to hire a private eye? He said, well, you never know. You got an up and coming career. Somebody might try to blackmail you or threaten you or steal something of yours. You never know. Basically, Bogey pockets it. And he said, yeah, you're right. No, I'll keep it just in case. And lo and behold, it shows up in the first chapter of Blackbird. And apparently somebody has left a mummified blackbird in a Egyptian canopic jar on his front doorstep. And I was a little worried about this. What's this supposed to mean? And it just happened to be that he was in the middle of filming The Maltese Falcon. So it means something. I don't like the looks of it. Maybe I should contact these people and find out. And it just so happened in the first chapter that right before he arrived, some chick, literally a corpse, wearing a overcoat with something feathery, topples right into their front office. And it's literally a parody of what happens to Captain Jacoby, who is shot up full of holes, who has rescued the Maltese Falcon from the burning Paloma and merchant ship and drops dead in Bogey's office. And that's how he gets his hands on the Maltese Falcon as a bargaining chip. So that's the first chapter, basically.
And I love how John Huston kills his father. Where do these ideas come from, Eliabeth?
I watch a lot of Turner Classic movies, obviously, but I also read a lot of biographies of the stars. And as you can see in the library behind me, and there was a wonderful story about in one of John Huston's biographies where they played a joke on his dad because his dad was not thrilled about doing that scene. He had his assistant or Jack Warner's secretary or somebody call up and say, you know what, there was a problem. We got to reshoot it. He was like, what? To go through this again. And they made him do so many takes of that that he was falling on the floor, dropping dead. He was like full of bruises. He was furious. And when you hear stories like that, you got to use them. They're just too good to pass up. So I will put little sticky tabs or sticky bookmarks in these books and say, okay, got to use this one. Got to use that one. I pull it together. And then, of course, you have to make some references to the original movie that you're going around. But you can't obviously repeat it verbatim. So it's a juggling game, but I'm definitely an outliner. If you're going to ask, am I a plotter or a pantser? I'm definitely a plotter for sure. And I could easily come up with 250 pages of plots, lines, notes, research before I start writing the first chapter. Easily.
How do you blend fact with fiction?
I just do. In fact, I'm actually struggling with it right now with the third book I'm writing, which is around Casablanca, because there is so much history going on in Los Angeles. I don't know if you know this or not, but with Blackbird, I end the book, a little bit of a spoiler, but not really, on December 7th, 1941. Okay. Very infamous day in history. Okay. They hear Roosevelt giving the speech on the radio about the bombing of Pearl Harbor. And it just happened to be that on December 8th, the very next day, was the day that a reader from Warner Brothers discovered a script in huge piles of a stage play called Everybody Comes to Rick's. And that's what eventually got renamed and turned into Casablanca. So I had my automatic beginning of the next book. It was just too good to pass up. So that's how you blend things, when I'll use real history and real people and all of a sudden say, where do we go from there?
Eliabeth Crowens is our guest. Hounds of the Hollywood Baskervilles has been nominated for an Agatha Award for Best First Novel. And we're talking about the next one, Bye Bye Blackbird, which has to do with the great film, The Maltese Falcon.
Right.
What an incredible idea for a series. This is terrific.
Thank you. I do want to clarify that for the best first novel for Malice Domestic, which is the convention that holds the Agatha Awards, they define best first novel as somebody's first mystery novel. Okay. A lot of other conferences, if you've published in a previous genre, which I have, you don't qualify for best first novel. So I did want a lot of people to realize, yes, I have done some science fiction novels in the past, and I also edited an anthology, but this is technically my first published mystery novel. So I'm really excited about it.
How did your background in journalism impact your switch to fiction?
Research. I'm always into research. My background is not so much journalism, but it's more photojournalism, believe it or not. It's stronger in that level, and I'm very visual. So if you really want to get specific, my background was photography and cinematography. And I also took screenwriting classes in college, certainly. And that's what I wanted to do when I moved out to Hollywood. But unfortunately was a single mom at the time, and I needed a paycheck at the end of the week. And I was not going to be able to get by on spec strips. And for some reason, my head was just in a space. I was into kind of those, I'd say I want to call them Fellini movies. But in New York, okay, there are film schools in New York and there's film schools on the West Coast. Okay. The West Coast people are much more commercial and studio oriented, and also television as well. On the East Coast, at least when I went to film school, let's hope it's changed, okay? But my teachers were more into the Andy Warhol school, who is not a commercial filmmaker. He capitalized on the fact that he was a very famous artist and he had his factory and he had his people that hung out with him. But his stuff was not very commercial. And in fact, probably the most commercial filmmaker that was around at the time when I went to film school was Woody Allen, of course. And he's still not super commercial compared to somebody like Jan de Bont or the guy who does the Transformers, those kind, or even Steven Spielberg. Okay, you can't compare the two. But I grew up with a background in like experimental artsy films, and that was not going to fly. And it's certainly because of that, my headspace was not in a position to try to get into a writer's room or contest for television or anything, try to break in that way. So because I had a background in cinematography and photography, I broke in doing stills. So I did the publicity stills and worked with publicists. So I was constantly, even if I wasn't writing articles, I was working with people who were and doing media placements. So that's how I made my foray into the movie industry.
Your protagonists, Babs Norman and Guy Brandt, have a very interesting dynamic. What can you share about their relationship?
Nick and Nora Charles, except that she's a straight female, kind of who went through a really terrible divorce. And in each of the books, her crazy ex-husband does not believe that she annulled their marriage. And he was violent. He was nuts. He tried to kill her at one point. And he's constantly getting himself thrown in jail. And he lives in San Francisco, but he always manages to track her down in LA and tries to kidnap her and bring her back to San Francisco. So she's got that ghost from the past. And Guy Brandt, her partner, is a closeted gay male in 1940s Los Angeles. And you had to be closeted. You were not out of the closet back then. You could kiss your career goodbye. There were a lot of famous people that got married, weren't happy, had a lot of divorces, but they had to put up a front in order to keep their jobs. But they're both frustrated for actors, and they decided to become private eyes together, and they're young. She's just barely 30. I'd say she's about 28, and he's just a little over 30, a few years older, and they make a lot of mistakes. But with Bye Bye Blackbird, that is their first murder case. They've done the Hounds of the Hollywood Baskervilles, was a celebrity dog napping case. And prior to that, they would do insurance fraud and skip tracing and the general type of things that most PIs do on a day-to-day basis. But they decided that after they found all these celebrity hounds and they got a huge reward from MGM, that they really wanted to focus, since they had the acting background, on celebrity cases. But the Blackbird is their first murder case. So they're not exactly, it's like a yikes. How much do we get involved? How much are the homicide detectives supposed to do? They make a lot of mistakes.
Were there many female PIs back?
In fact, sometimes she has Guy, who is her Brandt, who's her partner, has to front for her. So
he's the Remington Steele of the story.
Exactly.
This is how we pitch these things when we go to Hollywood, right?
No, it's true. It's true.
So who would you have on that topic? Who would you have play Babs and Guy if this was ever made into a movie?
For Guy, I had my eye on Zac Efron. I think, and he's the right age. He could play him. For Babs, I'm thinking Daisy Ridley. I would say the original person who inspired Babs looked a lot like Natalie Portman, believe it or not. But Natalie is like 40, 41 at this point. And I don't think it's fair to try to get her to play somebody under 30, whereas Daisy Ridley is the perfect age. And she did bang up job in the Star Wars movie as a strong female and the whole thing. So I think she could do, and she was great in the Kenneth Branagh Murder on the Orient Express. And she was fabulous in The Marsh King's Daughter. So I think she could pull it off. I think she'd be great. And she would be the right age.
We're in conversation with Eliabeth Crowens. The first in her series is Hounds of the Hollywood Baskervilles, and it's up for the prestigious Agatha Award, a nominee It's a pretty dense field of a lot of good stuff, but having read the advance copy of this book, I can say that it's going to be very competitive in that space. We're talking about her newest book, Bye Bye Blackbird, which has, again, a constellation of Hollywood stars, and one of the biggest as its lead actor in the story, Humphrey Bogart, who is dealing with a bunch of dead birds and all the stuff that happens when there is murder involved. What is next? Can you tell us a little bit about the next book?
The next one, I was lucky research-wise because I was able to carry over Humphrey Bogart again, as well as Sidney Greenstreet and Peter Lorre. But we're talking about Casablanca. So as I mentioned before, the end of Bye Bye Blackbird ends on December 7th, 1941. And it just happens to be that the script that turned into Casablanca was discovered the very next day.
How could it be more perfect than that?
Actually, the actual theatrical release of The Maltese Falcon was about a month before that. So it works out timing-wise.
Your website is Eliabeth Crowens, which is spelled CROWENS.com. And you can find out about her background there, her many books. One of the things that I think is fascinating, Eliabeth, is that I really enjoyed your Time Travel Professor series.
Thank you.
And felt that should have gotten a lot more attention, especially with the continual popularity of Doctor Who.
I wish. It's a tough game. I was with a small press. They didn't do much for me.
You tried it all, haven't you? You've done every possible way of publishing.
Yeah, and then I ended up negotiating the rights back and self-publishing. I redesigned the covers, and then I self-published the first one. I kept the title, obviously, and then I self-published books 2 and 3, and I got one more to go. But it's not easy. You don't want to see my tax returns.
The book is Bye Bye Blackbird. It's a smash. It's available wherever cool books are sold. They can grab it for you. And it was written by our special guest and one of my favorite people, Eliabeth Crowens. Thank you for the conversation.
Oh, thank you.
In Conversation with Terry Shepard is a copyrighted presentation. All rights reserved. I'm Lisa Davis. Join Terry Shepard next time in Conversation.